Hello, Tim. Welcome back to the TGS podcast. We have a pretty tough subject to cover today.
Johnny, how you doing? It's good to see you. It's been a while.
It has been. I mean, I don't know about you. My schedule's been sort of overprescribed my time somewhat, as we've just found out.
Yeah, to your dismay. But it's. I think at the minute everyone's busy. It just seems to be a time where we don't get time at the minute.
Yeah, right. I think certainly with a new government in for you, that's got to have put some pressure on your plate. It's also full swing shooting season with the usual goings on that are happening, with everything also going on behind the scenes with lead and just, well, your day-to-day job on top of that, plus also maybe spending some time with your family and with a gun in your own hands. Doesn't leave a lot of time for anything.
No, it doesn't. I've had one day with a gun this year, and that's absolutely it. So it is busy. It is busy. It's not always good busy, and some of it I want to talk about to you today is worrying. Worrying, I think, is the terminology to use at the minute.
Yeah, I mean, this all started with you sending me a picture of a car, which we can't particularly publish, but we can describe in its truest form as completely destroyed. Completely destroyed. And if you'd be so kind as to put some backstory in and sort of let people know what happened or what is happening out there.
Yeah, so within the last month, there have been, that we know of, two incredibly serious instances where poachers have assaulted a gamekeeper in one instance and a farmer in another instance in quite a serious way. The gamekeeper was run over, sustained multiple injuries, and was in an induced coma for 3 days because of the severity of the injuries. And more recently, a farmer was attacked by 6 vehicles with 4 individuals or 5 individuals in each vehicle, ramming his farm truck and firing steel ball bearings at it, all because they were out illegally poaching, coursing, generally creating mayhem and havoc around the countryside. Another instance was in another county, but again in the south of England, where a keeper's house was catapulted by poachers, and this is a nationwide problem. We've used the terminology, someone's going to get killed. Well, actually, somebody already has. A policeman, PC Harper, was killed. And the severity of the initial crime is taken seriously by some forces, not so seriously by others.
The initial crime being poaching, usually with dogs for hares, or these guys after deer more often.
Some, Johnny. We're finding deer poaching is becoming far more prevalent with dogs and lamps, but actually catapults are increasingly used to kill game birds. They're shooting them out of the trees at night, and
I'm led to believe this is more for gambling than for nutrition, right?
I think it's all a dark web gambling operation where huge sums of money are bet. And in previous cases where the police have managed to confiscate phones and get into them, they have found these portals where betting worldwide. Yeah, these things are webcasts sometimes. So worldwide betting on illegal activities. This isn't green grass from Emmerdale, catching a pheasant.
Yeah, it's not Danny, champion of the world stuff.
No, it's far from it. It's far from it, John. And I think part of the issues is a society shift away from robust policing, in my view. I can remember growing up, if you rode your bike on the wrong side of it, you'd literally get a clip round the ear and dragged home to your mother by PC.
I mean, we are all inherently violent creatures, humans, and as much as people deny it, there is a large sector of society who are more civilized, but those who aren't respond to violence, like probably more than anything else, right? Paying a £50 fine is neither here nor there, but the threat of physical punishment is pretty scary.
Yeah, and I think from a policing point of view, I've never been a police officer, and it would be really interesting to speak to a police officer about this issue, serving and an ex. It would be really fascinating. But if we look at crowd violence, so let's take 30 individuals in a field in Berkshire with lamps and dogs and vehicles chasing hares. And they're confronted by somebody, you've got crowd violence. So in this instance, you've got vehicles being rammed with other vehicles. You've got catapults, ball bearings being thrown through the windows of cars at an individual who's trying to stop someone causing damage on their land and protecting wildlife. Now let's step back from that scenario and let's put another scenario at near where you are, Johnny. Southampton Football Club. Saturday, 2:00. There's groups of people walking to a stadium. There's rivalry and there's a chance for violence. So what do the police do?
They line the streets. They're everywhere. There's a presence a visual presence.
Yeah, they police it, right?
Yeah, so because if you actually put that, any of the scenarios we just discussed, right? Cars being rammed, people getting shot at. Yeah, it's not with a firearm, but a steel ball bearing out of a catapult is pretty horrific as a damaging tool. Or even just physical violence. You put that into an urban setting, and suddenly the police would come down on that like a ton of bricks. It would be an outrage, front page news.
Yeah, absolutely. And interestingly, with the gamekeeper getting... so the police, to be fair to them, have arrested someone for attempted murder. They've announced that. That hasn't made the national press. A rural worker has been run over by a group of individuals committing a crime, but nearly killed. Nothing. Is it because it's got the word gamekeeper? With the other incident I've spoken about, the farmer that got attacked, that was last night, was on the BBC's website.
It's a very interesting point, right? Because inherently the media is not pro-gamekeeper, mostly because they're looking for... Which is interesting, because if I was looking for comments from them, I think it would actually be very good for their social media and media traction to have a debate in the comment section about whether this person truly deserved it just because they're a gamekeeper, which I would have thought there will be some ridiculous comments to that effect. I think we've both seen enough posts on the internet and news articles where that is actually the case, or they deserved it X, Y, and Z. But it is interesting that that isn't at least front page local news, right? First I heard of it was from you, and this is happening in our part of the world, within 20 miles of both of us.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I just find it strange, and it could be because of the severity of it, and there was an ongoing investigation, so it could be something to do with that. But they've made an arrest now, and I still haven't seen that published in the Andover Advertiser or the Hungerford Mercury or whatever the local papers are called there. So, and national press do feed from local press. That's generally how the waterfall works. But
was the attacker from a minority?
Yes.
Okay.
And just the fact that we're not actually openly saying what everybody's thinking equally is wrong, because
the police have had problems policing that kind of thing in the past, though, right?
Yeah. So, but I've got another issue with this, and again, so it's 2024. We're going to very soon be in 2025. We live in the United Kingdom, one of the most advanced societies in the world, one of the most prosperous economies in the world. Just by being born here, we've already won the lottery of life.
Pretty good, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it is. It's a very competitive country, and, you know, success by our metric is hard. But as you said, just being born here, you've done pretty well. You're never going to go hungry, and you're never going to go homeless pretty much from the start, which is an insane prospect.
Yeah, and those that do, there'll be reasons behind it. But as a large industrial nation with rules and laws, I can't believe we still let mob rule win. this is my big issue. So if a section of society, so I don't know, let's say the Morris Dancing Society of Great Britain wants to start illegally Morris dancing on the Midland motorways, or I don't know, Johnny, a terrible analogy.
So the Morris dancers have indeed decided to revolt. Okay.
Yeah.
It's an interesting concept, putting it into these sort of frames, same as putting a aggravated assault outside Southampton Football Stadium.
Yeah. So, but anyway, the Morris dancers, they're causing havoc. They're causing havoc in the streets. There's maypoles everywhere, right? People can't get to work because they're going to get tangled up. Yeah, and there's it's carnage out there, John. I'm telling you, it is carnage. So what these Morris dancers have decided to do, when the police come to remove the maypoles, the Morris dancers all get together and they form a mob. So the police won't police them because they do a risk assessment and it's deemed as high risk to go into the Morris dancers' base where they keep all the maypoles. So this gets worse, and because the Morris dancers don't get policed, then more vigilante Morris dancers join this group of Morris dancers.
Because you can do what you like when you're a Morris dancer.
Absolutely, and because
if you've not been told off once, you might as well keep pushing it out. Keep pushing the limit.
Absolutely. If you're not being arrested and you're not being searched, your premises aren't being searched, etc., etc., the Morris dancers can cause mayhem. So, any group of society, as far as I can see it, in the UK today, can form a mob and do what they want. End of story.
Pretty much, right? Again, I think. Providing we're going to stop this analogy at this point, but it is true. Like, I think if you have nothing to lose in this context, because it's not like the bank can control the Morris dancers, it's a free society there without hard policing. I suppose the question is how does one advocate for harder policing? It's not like you can call in SWAT.
Why not?
I don't know.
Yeah, I
because it's 2024, and that just is how I feel the world is.
Yeah, so we're in quite a woke society, and it's not a great word, but the NGA deliver training courses to the police about wildlife crime and the laws behind gamekeeping and various other things. And I delivered a course in a certain part of the country not 3 months ago, and two of the younger officers on the train, there's a rural cops in not a particularly rural county, but the rural cops. Two of them, their sergeant told me, wouldn't police at night in the rural area because they were scared of the dark. Now, that I can see by your expression, John, that you're relatively shocked, but that's fact. Okay.
I would have thought, right, being a rural cop is. Well, I don't know. I would have thought it's like the better of the jobs, surely. Like, going out at night in bloody rural Wiltshire is hardly like going out at night in St Mary's, Southampton. These things are very different. What are you going to do? Is the bogeyman, is it going to jump out at you? But then I also, probably the same as you, I'm overexposed to nighttime rural things. To me, that's my home, really. I'm happier there than I am out in the daytime.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I was just giving that as an example. That's going to be really rare, right? But that was genuinely true. So
yeah, but they also have a mandate to protect themselves, right? They're not heroes. They're not supposed to play the hero.
No,
and I'm not looking for policemen to get hurt, but if they.
Yeah, absolutely. And
I'm also looking for them to protect me in my own way, in a country where you can't really protect yourself to the same level as you could somewhere like America. And speaking about these issues with American friends, they don't even understand the concept or the problem, because it's an easier fix when you have an easier way to defend yourself, or an easier legal system for self-defense.
I agree, but I don't think I'd be an advocate for an American system here, to be totally honest.
I don't want to trade, but some. So talk to me about what you can do, like in these instances, given that it's becoming all the more common, clearly statistically. What is one to do? Because you could lose everything for defending what is yours.
Yeah, so I think the first thing the first thing you've got to do is not put yourself in danger. Right. So, in both of the incidents I was talking about, a couple of individuals approached large gangs of individuals, or put themselves into a position where they could be found by. So that's the first thing to do.
But at the same time, if the police haven't come to help you enough times, what are you going to do? Your wife and your kids are at home. Are you going to sit there? There does come a point where you have to go and tell these people to leave, and that this is unacceptable and this is not their bloody playground.
Yeah, and I think that's where having the conversations like this, and on Friday week, I've got a meeting with a group of police and crime commissioners, a group of MPs, and a group of landowners to formulate a plan in one region of the UK where this is particularly bad, and we can then come up with a blueprint that could be laid over nationally.
But this is a plan for policing, or a plan for what gamekeepers should do in action? All farmers, landowners, anyone who is in this kind of position.
All of the above, John. And I think ultimately what the NGO are going to be calling for is going to be a national task force. So a national task force that will be able to police these things properly, with properly trained officers in each region that will be able to actually act on these. I don't think there's a lot of point in sending one police car to Salisbury Plain when there are half a dozen other vehicles ramming a farmer, because I don't think that's going to help. But the police do need to police it, and they need to go in force. But they need the officers with the correct training. They need the officers with the correct training to go there. So, but that's down the line. But I do think at the minute you need to dial 999. So you need to not put yourself in harm's way. 999 it and demand the police come. Say you're threatened you're fearing for your life. The other thing we need to do, John, is we need to be much less annoyed with the police, so we don't report wheel marks across fields, gates being broken into. We have to report everything to build the true picture up of the volume of rural crime and poaching. And that's key for funding, because if a crime isn't reported, it effectively
phone them up and nothing happens. They give you a crime reference number that you can, call the insurance people and get a new gate, or just most of the time it's just a new lock, and you go, all right, where's 12 quid I'm never going to see again. So it is important, as we said in the past, to actually phone up. You can do it online for sure.
Yeah, and most forces you can, and some have got an app and some haven't. And that's the other thing. It's all different. It's really frustrating. We've got 42 police forces that police differently. That's why we'd like a national task force on this issue. And the other thing is poaching and coursing. And you've made a great film for the NGO, which head over to the NGO channel. It's fantastic. Jonny, a couple of years ago, made a really, really hard-hitting film for us, which I think it brings the case home quite nicely, doesn't it, with some of the interviews.
It was one of my favourites we made. It's a very personal film, right? Because you're hearing these people's stories of how essentially they've been marginalised and abused by everybody, and not looked after by the people who should be looking after them in the first instance, which it's a very British thing to say the government should look after you, of course, but we do pay them.
Yeah.
Every month.
And the other thing that potentially could happen. So we're seeing estates employing private security already.
So can private security forces intercept Morris dancers? Or has this become its own issue? If you're wearing a badge on your arm, does that give you more of a right to put this person on the floor and wait for police? I mean, legally it does.
It does.
But
I don't think it does. I mean, gamekeepers actually have quite a strong legal right to make an arrest and various other things under the Game Act and certain other acts, Poaching Prevention Act, etc., which are all 1800 acts. So don't rely on them, guys. But and you can't deport them anymore, which is unfortunate. But we're ending up having to take matters what's worrying is if people do genuinely take matters into their own hands, and then there's a standoff, and then there's problems.
Because in
So
reality, they've got a whole lot more to lose. Their life,
yeah,
their licenses,
yeah.
well, their safety and security is probably the biggest one, right? Because they could be a victim of terrorism in their own home, quite simply.
Well, I would say from the videos I've seen, and I've spoken to the individuals involved as well, or some of the individuals involved. Um, this is domestic terrorism, surely. At what point does a group of armed individuals driving around your land not not become a serious offence? So I think there's got to be proper sentencing. There's got to be arrests. Um, and interestingly, with the individual from Totton that I said has been announced to be arrested for attempted murder, I think it was the day after or 2 days after. It was less than a week. Now, to my mind, that probably suggests that police already knew who it was.
Hmm.
So why hadn't he been arrested previously for the poaching instances that he'd been doing all week leading up to it?
So we're thinking of harsher policing on lesser crimes to avoid a build-up to this point probably actually is the most intelligent source here, because inherently having an armed mob go up against a couple of cop cars is going to end in somebody getting hurt, as we've seen in the past, or dying, and then inherently so harsher policing on the base crime. And we've spoken about it in the past, right? With the cost of poaching
Yeah.
and all that kind of thing. It is a very simple thing to accuse someone of, right? Well, you need some video evidence of them doing it, a police car to come and arrest them, and then enough punishment for them to not come and do it again.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. We don't think it's very difficult, but there's clearly something there, and that's what I'm going to be doing for the next uh, period of time is trying to find out why it's so difficult. The NGO are constantly speaking to the police. My colleague John is always in talking to the police and having discussions with them about poaching and deer poaching and various topics, land management, etc. And I think the police want to police the crimes, and I think it's about resources. Um, and something somebody said to me the other day. Actually, rural crime should have the resources because we all pay a percentage of our council tax. Rural policing isn't a priority, but the percentage I'm paying for policing is more than someone in a city because my council tax band is generally higher being living in a rural environment. Not always, but generally. So, and I understand that rural policing is difficult. There's all these barriers that we keep going round and round in circles, and we've been talking about for 10 years. But what it does mean is that there are no police officers in rural areas. So where I live, there is a small town relatively close to me, within 6 miles. There used to be a police station there. There isn't now. They've moved the police station into a room next door to the fire station or ambulance station, and it's only open on a Tuesday and a Thursday. So you can only commit crimes on Tuesday and Thursdays if you want to get arrested. If you do it the other rest of the week, someone's got to come from 30 miles away. So I think we need to go back from hubs, and we need to go back to more local rural policing.
I think, I mean, you're not incorrect, right? The hub system might work in the more urban areas because inherently they're going to have to travel out of somewhere and it makes more sense logistically. But in rural areas, it's not like you can whiz round a motorway or a ring road and within 30 miles, that's 45 minutes driving, they're gone. Like, more importantly, try and cover that much area. Given that there's also humans that live there and there's just regular petty crime and regular policing issues that are happening as well, right?
Yeah. Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, I'm not quite old enough to remember the old police houses, but it used to be every other village would have a police house and a policeman in it, so you could sort of knock on the door and get the policeman up. I'm not suggesting we sort of go back to the 1950s, but we do need to have
Is there
constant, regular policing.
is there like deputization in England? Like that to me seems intelligent. If you could actually train gamekeepers to have some policing power and the responsibility that goes with it, of course, right?
Yeah.
It's not
Yeah.
just giving them this blanket vigilante thing. They would have to do things correctly and go through all the proper training. But is there not like a mileage in policing ourselves in a legal fashion?
Yeah. So there is, John. There's you have they used to call them plastic policemen. The community support officers.
That's not a very nice nickname, is it?
No, but it depends on each. It depends on each chief constable as to the power that the community support officers have. So they're not fully. They're part-time trained, but they're civilian. The civilian officers.
And cost a lot less accordingly, right?
Yeah. I think the training obviously costs the same because they do get good training. They I can't remember exactly when, but Bedfordshire Police trialled having gamekeepers on this particular role, and they would log on when they left the house. They would log on and say, "I'm now a police officer. I'm now at work." They'd go around their rounds, feed their pheasants, whatever it is they're going to do, and at that point, they're policing.
Interesting.
So, yeah, it sort of fell by the wayside because I think it was deemed that it wasn't fair that they were just sticking to their patch and they weren't going to Luton Football Club or Bedford Town Centre or whatever, and the other part-time police had to do that. Another force somewhere again in the southeast trialled with.
Yeah, but I'm sure most keepers would do it for free. Like they're just looking for the power to protect themselves and their local area, right? They're already paid.
Yeah, they don't get paid. They don't get paid anyway. So it is.
So why should they have to go to Luton Football Club?
Well,
for free?
Because that's what a police officer would have to do, and effectively, when they're on duty, they're a police officer.
But if the police officer doesn't have to come out and police rural crime, what if they have to go the other way round?
Well,
like,
John,
there's swings and roundabouts.
Yeah, this is the whole thing about this absolute annoyingly woke society we live in. That it's not fair. He's doing that, she's doing that. Another force trialled with Pony Club, but horse riders. So the same thing. They warranted some horse riders, and when they're going on their morning ride, they effectively radio and say, "I'm now on duty." So all of a sudden, you've got 2 mounted officers in a village. It's a great idea.
Yeah, I mean,
it's an absolutely great idea.
The Lord helps those that helps themselves, right? And
Absolutely.
if we can do that, that really removes a lot of the pressure. It removes a hell of a lot of the cost. Yeah, okay, the government have got to pay for some training, a couple of grand. Yeah. But given that, what would a call out to, let's say the police came out to 30 Morris dancers smashing up a car and trying to kill someone? What would that call out cost alone? Well, a helicopter in the air, 2 cars, 3 cars, 4 cars on the ground. More than training 5 or 6 people, for sure.
Exactly. And part of the problem is, John, where they're in these hubs, they're probably too far away to get there in time. They've probably gone by the time they get there. But if you had a PCC or, a community support officer there in the area.
If you were a trained community support officer, and your gamekeeper next door was, and the gamekeeper next door was, suddenly you could get 3 officers on site to do something. Hold them, make an arrest, do something official.
Even if it's to collect the relevant evidence. So the officer can say in court, "Yes, I saw that happening."
Yes, I filmed it, not just gamekeeper Bob. I filmed it.
Yeah.
I was there. I took the pictures. I secured the site. I am a trained individual, which, as we all know, is an important thing nowadays for everything that we do, whether that's hunting, shooting, fishing, keepering, or, in fact, policing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, this is very interesting.
So I think there's lots of routes we need to talk about, and I know for some people it won't be quick enough. It won't happen quick enough. It needs to happen today. the police need to police, but we need to also be realistic on on where we are. And I really want to.
It's been a slow decline, right? And so inherently, you're not going to get a quick fix.
Yeah, and then some counties where I live has gone the other way. The PCC's invested a lot of money into rural policing, and it's gone from 4 officers to considerably more. But I was told where you are, Johnny, in the county you live in, that they have 8 rural officers now from 6. Now, where you live is a substantially larger county than where I live.
Well, the military own a lot of where you live.
They do.
There is probably a very large. Well, there's a huge police force looking after that. They're just not a traditional one.
Yeah, exactly. So you look at it and you speak to the force and say, look, we take rural crime really seriously. We've gone from 6 officers to 8 officers, 8 dedicated rural officers.
Yeah, who ride together. So there's only 4 cars.
Yeah, and actually, if you take 8, there's 2 shifts a day, so that's 14 shifts a week. There's only 8.
And so yeah, you've only got a car and a half on it each time.
Yeah, max.
For the entire county. And it takes about an hour and 45 minutes to cross it.
Oh, easily. Where you are. Easily.
Yeah.
Easily. And it's a bit more urban than where I am. But it's still a huge...
Yeah, so you could get someone out of town relatively easily, given that we are a little more accessible, but not... Yeah. It's an interesting one.
Force by force, it's different. And, but when a PCC says to you, well, we take rural crime really seriously, we've got 8 officers. Fantastic. How many officers have you got in the force entirely? Actually, that's something we could look up. But
I'm Googling it right now.
Yeah, so how many officers have you got? And 8 of them specialise in rural crime. Is it a token effort? Is it what are the barriers for the police force to have more rural officers or PCCs? Sorry.
There are 1,255 police officers employed by Wiltshire Police, 1,019 police officers, and PCSOs 132.
Yeah, police support officers, the PCSOs. So the PCSOs are. So I think Wiltshire have got quite a lot of rural officers actually. But
wow, put this into perspective. By the way, Hampshire have 3,200 officers and 2,400 staff.
Gosh, that's quite admin heavy, isn't it?
Well, there is a lot more people in Hampshire, I would have thought.
Yeah. So that particular force is the one with 8 rural officers. So 3,200 officers, 8 of which are rural officers. So specific rural officers. Now, to my mind, and this is really base thinking, and
we have 3 times the population of Wiltshire.
Yeah,
500,000 in Wiltshire, 1.5 million in Hampshire.
Yeah.
So technically, you're more policed. How's that feel?
I feel
you're safer.
Already.
I mean, Wiltshire is just safer and nicer in every way.
Even though both these incidents actually occurred in Wiltshire, the most recent ones I'm talking about. But so we've but we're talking about 2 places we know very well, aren't we?
Yeah.
And I would imagine TGS viewers would be able to send you hundreds of stories that will follow a similar pattern, right?
It would be interesting to know, right, how many of these things go unreported. Because inherently, you get into a fight with someone on your land, you could lose your guns instantaneously, and it's not worth it. If you're there to protect it, you get a black eye or something. Most people wouldn't even phone that in the grand scheme of things, because of the repercussions that will happen to them, right? And ergo, a little bit like reporting the broken gate theory.
Yeah.
There's a real issue here in terms of having to report it, and having the power or the confidence in the police to say, I was protecting myself. And maybe there should be an NGO guidance book for how to act in those scenarios, and I'm sure you've probably got that underway. And if it is just stay away, then we all know that's kind of untenable in a lot of these scenarios, right?
Yeah. So we've just finished a rural crime survey, and I've just pulled up some of the results here. Um, and we asked some basic questions. It was actually before all this happened. Uh, and some of the questions: would a greater police presence increase feeling of safety in your rural environment? 82.5% of people said yes. I think that's fairly obvious, isn't it? And it's what we talked
That's
about. The old police
surprisingly
stations.
low, actually.
Well, this
Or
is
is
the
that just that's a
interesting.
lack of faith in the police? Do you think the other
Well, I
18%?
don't know. I think maybe some people just feel safe where they are. Do
It's
you feel that your
possible.
rural, yeah? Do you feel your rural police unit has the resources, equipment, funding, drones, etc., to properly police your rural community? 90% said no. They're under resourced.
Okay.
Are you confident that if you call the police an emergency, they will attend? 90.2% of rural response said no.
That is shocking.
Yeah, yeah.
If we're talking about like votes of no confidence, there isn't much of a greater one than that, is there?
No. And then interestingly, it talks about all different types of rural crime, but poaching is by long and away the most prevalent. And I can put it into percentages. Yeah, so about 20% of all rural crime that we've asked about is poaching,
Okay.
and then 15% is burglary. So there's more poaching than burglary.
It's a it's definitely a very large project to take on to try and fix this. I mean, just listening to those statistics, firstly, it's pretty it's not a boost to one's faith in life, is it? Let's go with that. It's pretty depressing.
Yeah,
But to try and firstly fix people's opinion of the police, which needs to be done probably after finding some solutions with the police, is a hell of a task, given that this is clearly not a priority for them anyway. This isn't something they care about as a main driver, even though it affects people's lives, same as any crime, if not worse, realistically, because this is their not only their home but their job for the most part for farmers, gamekeepers, landowners, any rural employee. But I wish you the best of luck, and if anyone can do it, it's you guys.
well, we're on it, and we will be keeping regular updates, and maybe we'll have a chat with get some PCCs actually on this podcast and talk to them and some chief officers. That's what I want to do. I want to ask them the questions face to face in a
Well, if
public
they're brave
forum.
enough to come on, let's get them on. I think it'll be a real interesting thing to. I mean, I'm sure, like all of these things, we will get an overly political response. It will be a very vanilla affair, but it would also be interesting to see where they're coming from. I would have thought, like most conversations, they'll go, it's not just you guys who are struggling, urban police forces need more funding, urban this, blah, 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 and we have to split it accordingly. But if you did split it according to council tax, I'd feel quite good about that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, look, without money, nothing's going to get fixed. Well, none of us want to pay more tax, so it is always going to be difficult. But I think ultimately we just want a fair ride. We want to be treated fairly, and that's the key. And that's from everyone, John. That's from reporting in the press down to actual policing on the ground. We want a level playing field for everyone.
Not an unfair request, mate. Not an unfair request. Thank you very much. I think that was actually a really fascinating insight and discussion. And again, it's a lot of work you've got here to try and fix this. But there are clearly solutions, providing that, they're open to them. And that perhaps they understand that this has to be treated on a case-by-case basis. Just because it's not fair that a gamekeeper doesn't go to Luton Football Club to do his
Yeah,
policing, that's not why you're doing this. You're doing this to fix the rural crime issue, not an overreaching one. And
yeah,
actually, why not let people protect their own area? That's not a bad thing. I
yeah.
don't think. Like, in
No,
terms of
no.
police community support, the community should perhaps be supporting it,
Yeah,
not
yeah.
people from outside.
Absolutely. Absolutely, totally agree with you, John. As always.
I like that. It's the first time ever you've said that. We're going to make a more regular thing of agreement.
Well, I think I'm
Tim,
going to have to.
thank you very much, Tim. I presume you've got a busy couple of weeks ahead.
Yeah, busy couple of weeks. Working on various political stuff with the NGO, and obviously we've got to remember the whole world shuts down for 2 weeks around Christmas, so we've got to try and get things moving before then. And then the New Year's always flat out with stuff.
And hopefully a little bit of shooting. Yeah.
Yeah. So just so you know, Johnny was invited shooting on my shoot at home for an amazing. It's going to be probably the best day of the season. It's going to be amazing.
It would have been. We would have been hanging out. That would have been a great
phenomenal. Day. And he forgot to write it in his diary, so he's put work in. So that's how committed he is to country sports.
I mean, it is actually really heartbreaking. I feel not only stupid but sad. I've let myself down. I've let you down. I've let the community down as well. Really,
you've let your fans down.
Yeah, but as it is, the pheasants will have to live, fly another day, and we'll have to come in January and chase some with dogs on the floor, which will be.
We'll do that. We'll get you on a duck flight or something like that. So
this all sounds good to me. Sounds good to me, sir. Looking forward to it.